Hi, welcome to Poetry and Prose and happy Halloween. This is our Halloween meeting. I would like to thank everyone for showing, and I'm looking forward to a spooky session. I am Gersha, and I would like to share today a piece that I wrote. It's a bit of an original piece, and just give me a moment to bring it up. Thought it was already up. Here we go. It's called Working Class Revenge. She dances in the moonlight, skin soft and cooling, blood on the dogwood pooling, on 400-year manicured greens. Silence is this ballerina Santana. Pampered feet release her Saint Laurent. Dirt drags under her grayish nails. Hardening beneath clothes, rough hands and jagged nails lift, gyrate and sniff. Iris and cedar infused hair, pat and pull to face. The hazy eyes of a true lover's stare. Thank you for allowing me to open with my piece. Any feedback would be welcomed.
Potent, Gersha. Potent.
Potent like a witch's brew? Okay.
Yeah, Gersha, I read the earlier version, right? And my first instinct was to let you to actually hear it, because it's that kind of a piece. You know, this version is you added stuff in it that made it, took out stuff that made it, you know, more, you know, like that kind of some circling, circling. You know, the structure of it is something like that. You know, it just like she kind of dances and pirouettes. The structure of the poem, at least how you read it, or how, you know, gave that impression as well too. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's it.
Thanks, Randy. And this is why I feel like having a community of writers is so important, because I finished work last night, maybe around 10, and I was trying to get some feedback on the piece. I'll read the original piece so you guys can see how important it is to get feedback and do your edits. The original piece goes like this. Working Class Revenge. She danced in the moonlight, skin soft and cooling, dew on the dogwood pooling, glistening like eyes pleading, melody a Santana of a heart beating, dirt under grayish blue nails, pretty feet dragging, lifting, pulling close, hardening under clothes, cedar, iris and cedar infused hair, hazy eyes of a true lover's stare. And I reached out and, you know, said, what do you guys think, to a couple writers, and I got some feedback and did some edits, and the piece I read initially is what I came up with. But it's when I'm going through my phone to call, and, you know, you're like, who can I call that will, one, I wouldn't have to begin explaining everything about poetry with, and be able to get some constructive feedback. Because, you know, when you call your family and friends, they love it. They say, oh, that's great. But you really need another writer to give you that feedback. Okay, we're going to move ahead. And I would like to introduce Vishnu Gosain. He'll be reading Opening and Closing of the Gates.
Good, thank you. So my piece is a short piece called The Opening and the Closing of the Gate. Robbie and Ravi cremated their brother on a Thursday morning. He had died of diabetes-related causes. The brothers were upset because they knew that diabetes ran strong in the family. And as one doctor said, to avoid this dreaded disease, the family must change its lifestyle, not him. she succumbed to it. On the Friday morning following the funeral on Thursday, and in keeping with tradition, there was a simple ceremony to perform with the bones of the deceased. The ceremony must be done early on the Friday morning on the pyre and the ashes raked in the sea. Robbie and Robbie did not live at their brother's place, who had married and fathered 4 children. The two arrived much earlier at 5 ready at his house, secured their car, and found the gate to his house locked. The children knew the uncles would come to their house to pick up the religious paraphernalia before proceeding to the sea. They had planned to be up early, but they were so tired that they overslept in spite of their good intention. And Robbie said, as the duo made their way to the house, "I hope they get up, yes." "I don't," Robbie said, pulling at his nose thoughtfully. "We tell them we come in by 6, so they'll be up by 6. Lord, man. So it look like we have to wait. Man, I have things to do, you know." All right. Let's hope someone sees us and opens the gate." Within seconds, they heard a creak. The two looked at the gate. Oh yes, it was an automatic gate, so it moved slowly and straight to the end. "You see, man," Robbie said, "they ain't sleeping. Nice children. They must be still damn tired from yesterday and the days before," Robbie said. "Still, they're on time." Robbie and Robbie walked in and the gate slowly closed behind them. There were 3 folding chairs opened in a row, so the 2 brothers sat and left the one in the middle empty. "Time for coffee," Robbie said. "The weather nice and cool." "You're damn right," Robbie said. "It's cold, not cool. Soon the coffee will come, man. Nice, hot, steaming coffee as our brother liked to drink." And what he does say? "No sugar, no sugar. Give me just so, just so." It was a sad morning, but their brother was already cremated, and Robbie and Robbie had done their best to afford him a decent funeral. They were cracking their fingers while their eyes were firmly on the door. They were waiting to see one of their nieces emerge with 2 cups of steaming coffee. 15 minutes later, they were still waiting. Half an hour went, and they were still waiting. No door opened, and no coffee came. And Robbie said, "But I go in myself and make this coffee. Yes, these girls. Better had in church," Robbie said. "I find it taking too long to make the coffee, man." The 2 tried to open the doors to gain entry into the house, but both doors, the garage and the front doors, were firmly closed. "What the hell," Robbie said. And Robbie added, "What the hell in truth? Look like they have no respect for their father. Let us lock and knock on the door to tell them, girls, we're waiting on the coffee." So the 2 rapped on both doors again and again, loud and clear. And then, "Uncle, is you? I come in to open the gate." "Open the gate? We're already inside by your front door." "What? By the front door? All you climb over the wall? All you joking, yes?" The niece said with a laughing voice, "All you joking in truth, yes?" Not believing what the uncle said, the niece opened the front door. "What? All you here inside in truth? All you really jumped over the gate or what? I can't believe this." And Robbie said, looking at the gate and his niece, "Somebody opened the gate." "All your joke, yes, uncle. All your cracking joke on a morning like this. Everybody was sleeping." By this time, the older sister rushed to the front door where all had gathered. Robbie, feeling he had to explain, repeated, "We stand by the gate. It opened and we walked in, and then it close behind me. But the gate automatic, and the automatic spoiled. So that is why I was coming outside to open the gate manually with the key. Wendy said. Nobody could open the gate without a key, nobody. And Robbie said, what the hell? You sure you didn't open it and gone back to sleep? You're sure? And the other niece added, no, I didn't do it for sure. And Ravi said, well, we saw chairs and sat down waiting for all you to bring the coffee. Chairs? What chairs? And all looked at these open chairs in the garage. We stacked all the chairs last night. None was open, I am sure. None? And Rabbi explained that there were 3 open chairs. They sat down on 2 and the third one was empty. Oh my God, one is exclaimed. Oh my God. So who was on the 3rd chair? And no one answered. But the 2 sisters hugged each other tightly while the 2 brothers stared with scared faces at the empty chair. Until this day, no one knew who opened the gate or laid the chairs out in the garage. Many speculated, but nothing was logically concluded. Thank you. That's my story.
Thank you for sharing. When you
Thank
said
you.
opening and closing the gates, that's what I pictured, hearing the gate creak slowly open. Any other comments?
That was well read. The cadence brought you into the story. I think reading it is just as important as the prose itself.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vish. That was a lovely story. Well, a
Thank-
scary story also. I wouldn't want to be in that position. Thanks.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for such an exceptional reading. We're going to go ahead and move on to Cassie. He's going to be reading a story by Alicia Janke, Blanche, and Who's Who by Cassie, an original piece. Cassie, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for introducing me, Gersha. Great story by Vishnu there. Do I read both or one at a time?
I think you can read both if you'd like. It's listed together.
I'd prefer to separate them, if that's all right.
Not a problem. Which one are you going to read first?
I'm going to read Blanche by Alicia Janke.
Okay, and I'll put you later on down the list for your original piece.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Blanche was ecstatic. Her mother told her that she was allowed to swim with the fishes and go to the surface. She warned her not to let the humans see her. A school of guppies passed by the cave. Blanche followed them. She loved their tiny, colorful bodies. As they passed the pool's bed, she saw giant tater feeding off scraps and moss, keeping the pool clean. Her mother used to tell her stories about the surface, but forbade her to go until she was old enough. Her mother and aunts defended Blanche and the other young mermaids fiercely. They ensured that Blanche and the other mermaids were not seen by men. As Blanche neared the surface, she heard voices. She dared not go further because she was afraid it might be the humans. Mother said humans were cruel and primitive. If they saw her, they would come hunting and once the mermaids were found, they would be killed. So poor Blanche had an innate fear of humans. Gently, she lingered near the surface, taking caution not to emerge above the pool. She heard the musical songs of the waterfall in the distance. Quietly, she raised her head, looking in the direction of the voices. She saw a group of humans. Some had beautiful flowing hair like her and her sisters and cousins. Some were tall and large with short hair. She hurried back to the cave because she didn't want them to see her. She thought she would tell Mother how she arrived and heard voices, and she saw a group. However, their backs were turned. Then she decided against it. If Mother knew that humans were around, she might say no. Nothing bad happened, and Blanche's curiosity got the better of her. She wanted to go to the surface at night. If she kept her secret from her mother, Mother would let her go. Night came, and Mother allowed Blanche and her sisters to go to the surface. Blanche's heart pounded as she eagerly swam towards the moonlight. She decided she would take a different direction from her sisters. As she emerged from the pool, she was greeted by the most beautiful sight. A huge, luminous moon stood in the sky. The stars were like tiny jewels. "Hello," she heard. She spun around, and standing at the rocks was a tall, muscular man in shorts. Hastily, she dived underwater. The man had seen her. She was so terrified. Mother had warned her. She did not find him frightening, but Mother said, that's where the story ends.
Thank you. Any comments?
Yes, thank you, Cassie, because I read the story before I said it to you, and I like the way that Alisa ends the story abruptly and leaves the rest for our imagination. And I think that helps in this type of setting where we are talking about scary stories and folklore.
Yes, when I was preparing for it, I was taken up with the short sentences that were used. Everything just spick and span. To the point. Next point. Move on. Taking us, along the ride and the thinking of the mother and and Blanche herself. So well written, and it takes us into a nice area of scary, so to speak.
Okay,
Thank
Alisa,
you, Blanche. Thank you, Alisa.
Alisa is here. Alisa, would you like to make a comment?
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for reading. I found that it was read really well. This story was written when we used to do like those flash fiction exercises during poetry and prose, like when we had the in-person sessions. So like when we would have probably like a 10 or 15 minutes to make up a story. That's how I came up with this. The line was swim with the fishes. So that's how the first sentence starts with Blanche got to swim with the fishes. So yeah.
I miss those sessions. They always brought the best little tidbits that you could take home and work on. Lovely reading, Cassie, and lovely story, Alyssa. I feel as though when he saw her And there was silence between them, and they were standing there staring at each other. Suddenly all the bugs or whatever in the area just became much more louder. And I'm gonna move ahead to Randy. Randy, welcome, thanks for
Hi.
joining us.
Okay, I'm enjoying. All right.
Randy will be reading The Engagement, another one by Alyssa.
Okay. Neela, I'm done. I can't do this again. He turned on his heel to walk out of her life. But Amit, we sleep together last night. I say we would have get married. How you could just drop me just so? Look, we done and we done. He stormed out the door. Neela felt her leg tremble. She dropped on the sofa and tried to process what happened. Last night seemed so passionate. When they were finished, he had wrapped his arms around her and they fell asleep in each other's warmth. He knew that this was their last night. She felt exploited. Why did he love her, then discard her? How she detested him. What a cruel soul. She lived all alone in a house she had acquired. Family-like commerce, she used to say to herself, hence the reason to break away. Her mother and sister treated her with disdain, but were quick to beseech her to stay. This had nothing to do with family. It was about keeping her under their watchful eyes so they would know all her affairs, then use it to subtly insult her. Neela knew her family so well that she decided her peace of mind was more of a priority. She took every single belonging and moved to her new house. She had introduced Amit as her boyfriend to the family. He was a successful businessman, a known millionaire. Her sister was particularly resentful of her relationship and used to insult her. After Amit's breakup, Neela cooked roti and baigan with curry dalu. She ate alone. Still, numb from the breakup, at least she thought, in an effort to console herself. The following morning, her cell phone rang. Hi, Neela, her sister Muni greeted. Hi, Muni. What happened? Like you're depressed or what? No, I good. She called to tell you get engaged. I called to tell you I get engaged. The party is this evening. Okay, Neela was stunned. She had no idea that Muni had a boyfriend. She didn't care to go, but her sister pestered her until she said yes. Muni told Neela that she wanted family to be there on her special day and that Neela was her special sister and friend and that Neela's support was vital. Neela knew how Muni liked the mama guy people, so she doubted her sincerity. However, if she didn't go, the whole family would brand her as an envious big sister. There were whispers in the community that Muni was a sapin. Every man she had been intimate with had died. Neela didn't believe in that nonsense. This was the 2000. People should be embarrassed to still carry on such belief. Muni had two boyfriends before. One fell off a cliff at the beach and the other got into a car accident. Both were random events. As far as Neela was concerned, these things just happened. There was no need to invent an imaginary character to explain something that could be understood with simple logic. She smiled when she remembered her grandmother say, whenever you hear 3 knocks, ask first who it is. If there was no answer, that meant a spirit was at the door and no one should open it. Opening the door was an invitation to the spirit who knocked. Neela didn't believe in those old wives' tales, spirit, sapping, all nonsense. As evening approached, Neela felt as though something terrible was going to happen. In spite of this, she dressed in her best sari and jewels and drove to her mother's house. As she stepped into the living room, all seemed normal. She chatted with her family members she hadn't seen in a while. Suddenly, her sister strolled out of the kitchen with Amit. What was he doing here? Everyone, meet my fiancé, Amit. The family clapped and cheered. Neela retreated to the back of the living room. She would slip out as soon as possible. She felt furious. How could this be? How could he? But wait, Muni knew that Amit was her boyfriend. How did they end up engaged? After the woman and her love spoke, everyone went to eat. Neela went up to Muni. Sis, I could talk to you? Muni smirked. Both ladies went into Muni's room. With an unnaturally calm demeanor, Neela posed a question. Muni, how long are you together for? 2 years. What? Neela couldn't believe it. She was the other woman all along. Amit and you was just friends. He loved me, said Muni triumphantly. Just then, Amit came into the room. He put his arms around Muni's waist. I hope Neela am bothering you, he chuckled. She shocked. Muni seemed elated. The couple laughed scandalously. Neela felt like a fool. She ran out of the house and went to a car. Neela, let me tell you something. Amit had grabbed her arm. You leave me and Muli alone, eh? And me want you to come wedding. Okay, was all Neela could say. She hurriedly got in the car and sped home. She cried until she fell asleep. When Neela awoke, she told herself that she wanted nothing to do with family ever again. Just then her phone rang. Yes, Ma. Ma said that Neela left too early and didn't even eat. To be sour and envious, Neela hung up. She didn't care what people said. Both Amit and Muni were wicked. They knew what they were doing. Neela felt a metallic taste on her tongue. Without hesitation, she hurried to the washroom where she threw up. I have to forget them, she thought. This breakup was not going to affect her. She could always build another relationship. Amit wasn't the only man on earth. The month passed. She heard nothing from her family or Amit. She got sick every day until she went to the doctor. One quiet morning, her phone rang. She saw a private number on the screen. She didn't want to answer, but the ringing was so persistent that she slid the green icon. Why you tell me? A deep manly voice thundered. Amit? She whispered hoarsely. Yeah, it's me. Your sister is a sapping. Neela hung up. What the hell? Casually, she looked out the window. Amit was standing outside of the front gate with a grin. She opened the window. Get out, she screamed. He looked at her harshly. I could ignore him, she thought. She heard the bell ringing. However, she refused to come out of the house. Suddenly, the ringing stopped. Cautiously, she peeped out the window. He was gone. She went about her business. Suddenly, her phone rang again. It was a private number. She wasn't going to answer. The bell rang 3 times and stopped. She looked out the window. No one was there. She carefully went outside and looked at the main road. An elderly gentleman was approaching her gate. He tipped his straw hat and kept walking. 2 neighborhood dogs were roaming the pavement. Who could have rang the bell? She didn't see any car drive off or anyone running away. She got back in the yard and securely fastened a heavy padlock. She went back inside. The phone rang, then stopped. Bing, bing. Her WhatsApp went off. When she opened the app, there was a weird number, 000-000. Who in Trinidad and Tobago had that number? She saw photos of herself by the gate. Who could have taken those pictures? The old man didn't have any phone in his hand. She would have noticed if he had a device that faced her. It was 3 photos. Neela was terrified because the photos were taken close up, as though the person was by the gate. Neela! She looked out the window. Amit was standing in the yard. He must have climbed over the gate. She dialed her sister's number. Hello, Muni. Tell your man to stop harassing her. What? Tell your blasted man to leave me alone. Nila, you dote sure. Your man, he dead. She heard Muni sobbing. What? Was Muni playing a disgusting prank? Yesterday, some fellas shoot up his car and kill him. It was on the news. I say you see it? Sorry, I wasn't watching news. I didn't go on social media and nobody tell me. As Nila hung up, she questioned her sanity. Was she so badly off that she was hallucinating? Did her subconscious mind yearn for a reunion with Amit? How absurd. But who did she see? She peeped through her curtains, nothing. Suddenly she heard 3 knocks on the door. Without hesitation, she opened the door. No one was there. She chuckled to herself. She looked around and closed the door. She turned on her heels and was face to face with Amit. He looked different now. He had bloody spots on his clothes. His eyes were ghastly red and his lips were blue. There was a big gunshot wound on his cheek. Why you didn't tell me you're making baby? My baby? He screamed vengefully. Nila fainted. The end. That's it.
I just want to make one comment. That's a great story. And for those not familiar with the sapin, a sapin in Indian Trinidad folklore, a sapin is a very beautiful woman who has the image of a snake along her spinal column. During lovemaking, it comes alive and bites the man making love to her. He dies within a few days, not of poison, but of other ailments or accidents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Alicia, you
Thanks
wanted to
for
comment?
reading. No, I just wanted to say thanks for reading. And well, initially this story was an idea for a short film. I wanted to do like a short horror film, and I was thinking about, you know, somebody who died, and you know, the person doesn't know that it's a spirit they're talking to, and in the end, you know, there's a big reveal. Well, I wrote it as a story, and then I decided to add in the part where the girl, you know, could be a sapin. So you know, that came in like after the first write-up of the story. And well, that thing about the 3 knocks, um what happened is one of my you know, I was telling one of my friends an experience that happened at my home actually. You know, at time my brother said that he heard our front gate open and he heard like somebody walking up our front steps and a knock on the door. But when he opened the door, you know, there was nobody there. And I was telling a friend about it, and she said, you know, whenever you hear knocking on a door, you must always ask, well, who is there? And, you know, you should ask about 3 times. And if you don't get any answer, well, it's possible that there's a spirit trying to get in. You know, and if you open the door, you know, without asking who's there, or you just open the door without getting an answer, well, you're inviting the spirit in. So that part, you know, is what I included in the story, because like I wanted in the end to have the spirit like in the house with her. So yeah, so thanks for reading the story.
It's a
Okay,
great
thanks,
story.
thanks, Alyssa. Yeah.
I've always heard this saying that if you come in after midnight, you should walk in backwards, because if you walk through the door, you know, in the normal way, the spirit will follow you inside.
Yeah, that's a like, you know, I know a lot of old people say that because my great grandmother, she used to do that to my grandfather. If he come home after midnight, she used to make him walk in through the door backwards. Something about spirit follows you. So if you turn backwards, they wouldn't be able to follow you because you're facing them or something like that.
Thank you. If there are no other comments, we're going to go ahead to Mutilal, who will be reading The Daughter-in-Law's Revenge.
Thank you. This piece is entitled The Daughter-in-Law's Revenge. Storytelling is an art that has survived the ages. However, many fairy tales and the legends behind them are actually the diluted version of uncomfortable and gruesome historical events. As children, we were told stories not only as entertainment, but as cautionary messages to teach us moral lessons, as in Aesop's fables, or that obeying our parents would keep us safe from harm, as in other fairy tales. Albert Einstein, the great scientist, said, if you want your children to be intelligent, read them fairy tales. If you want them to be more intelligent, read them more fairy tales. In addition to the storybooks at school, the Grimm's fairy tales, Andersen fairy tales, and others, my grandmother treated us to a diet of stories she brought from her ancestors from India. Some were delightful tales about princes and princesses, kings and queens, or heroes who saved their villages from disaster. But there were many that were scary and horrifying. I remember my grandmother sitting us down in the darkness as she told us some of the creepiest stories. Although we were scared, we always seemed to prefer the stories that frightened us the most. Let me share one of my grandmother's hair-raising stories. There was once a man and his wife who had an only son. They lived in a small village, and as was the custom at that time, they had arranged, while their son was still a boy, for him to be married to his mother's rich relative when he grew up. As the boy became a young man, he fell in love with another village girl. She had no parents and grew up with her brother, who was very poor. His greedy mother was furious, but the boy wouldn't budge. The dowry was small, but the grasping mother took it all, as well as all the bride's jewelry. The father-in-law was all right, but the mother-in-law was cruel. Every day, after the father and son went to work in the fields, she treated the new bride with brutality. The bride had to clean, wash, cook, and repair the floor. If she wasn't satisfied, she beat the daughter-in-law. Sometimes she wasn't given food. She bore it all and said nothing to her husband and father-in-law. But this did not make things better. The old lady was plotting how to get rid of her. One day, when her son and husband went to work in the fields, she put the poor girl in a bag, tied it up, and placed it on top of a bull cart and headed for the cremation ground. She planned to put her on a stack of wood and burn her. The girl tried to scream, but her mouth was tied. As she was about to light the fire, the old woman realized that she had forgotten her matches and went back home to get some. Meanwhile, there were 3 watchmen at the cremation site. They saw the bag atop the stack of wood. It was wiggling. Curious, they approached and opened it. They screamed as the girl rolled out. Thinking that the dead had come alive and being frightened, they began chanting a prayer from the Holy Ramayana. Bhut pisach nikat nahi aave, Mahabir jabna masunate. Jai Rama Shri Rama Jaya Jaya Rama, Shri Rama Jai Rama Jaya Jaya Rama, which meant, All ghosts and demons and evil forces disappear at the mention of your name, O Hanuman. As they became calm, they freed the girl who told them her story. They were all afraid of the old woman. So they filled the sacks with charcoal and other burnt material from the cremation site, from the cremation ground, and put it back on the fire, hid and waited. Sure enough, the old one returned singing, "Today you go meet your mama and papa, and my son go marry the rich man's daughter." She soaked the bag with the pitcher and watched happily as it began to burn. Later in the evening, the girl began the long journey towards her village, intended to go back to her brother's home. The evening came and she was tired. Soon she came to a Ganesh temple and stopped to rest. As she was sleeping, 3 thieves arrived. They had stolen jewels and fine clothing and money from a rich man's house, and the police were after them. They decided to hide the jewels among the murtis in the temple so that they would not be caught with it. Anyone who has visited a Hindu temple would know that the murtis are decorated with much jewelry. When the police arrived, they had no jewelry on them, so the police left with them. All this time, the girl hiding behind the large murti of Lord Ganesh, the protector, was praying, "Om Gam Ganapatiye Namo Namah, Siddhi Vinayaka Namo Namah, Ashtavinayaka Namo Namah, Ganapati Bappa Moria." She was asking Lord Ganesh for protection. Lord Ganesh answered her, "Beti, you will always be under my protection. Take the stolen jewels from the murti, for they are inauspicious for us gods. Let this be a gift from the gods, and may it help you through your poverty." She dressed herself with the jewels and the fine clothes and proceeded to her mother-in-law house. The old lady was shocked. "Who are you?" she asked. "It's me, your daughter-in-law," was the reply. "But how? I burnt you." "Yes, you did burn me, but I went to heaven and I met my mama and papa. They said I was too young to be dead and to take these jewels and go back to my home and have a happy life. So I came back here." "Really?" said the woman, the greedy old woman. "Then you must burn me too, so I could meet my parents and could get jewels from them." But the daughter-in-law refused, and the old hag called her ungrateful. He then went to the cremation site and paid a large sum of money to the watchmen, who knew what she was and were only too glad to carry out her wishes. Thank you.
Thank you for such a lovely read. Any comments?
I
Guess no one wants to
wasn't
upset their mother-in-law. I heard
I
someone come
wasn't
in. Any
Yeah.
comments?
I always enjoyed the singing.
Yes, I love how you always incorporate that in your stories. Find a way to do that. It's really nice.
Very true.
Okay, that's something that my grandmother used to do when she tells her story. So I try to pattern myself the way she used to tell the story. Thanks all.
It's nice.
I thought it was very comical, and I really enjoyed it from beginning to end. Very suspenseful, and I like the twist ending at the end.
Thanks, Junior. Yes. I saw a meme the other day. It said, we are the witches they didn't burn. So I guess for your story, we are the daughter-in-laws that didn't burn. Mutilal, you're muted.
Okay, thank you. I think we have Afisa coming on next. Afisa is a head librarian at the Davie Library. And as we all know, the Davie Library has always accommodated poetry and prose. So lovely to have you here, Afisa. And you are going to share a story, a folklore story by another local author, Michael Anthony. So go share spotlight, Afisa.
Will do. Welcome, Afisa. Thanks for reading.
Good afternoon, everyone. All right, so this story, it's taken from a collection of folklore stories by Michael Anthony entitled Caribbean Folktales and Fantasies. The story I'll be doing is In the Bushes Near the School. The boy in the broad-brimmed hat playfully grabbed the bell and dashed into the bushes, laughing. The whole band of children ran off after him, and it was the noises and shrieks that attracted the teacher. She had always told the children not to go into the bushes, for she did not want to be responsible for any snake bites, or for any stings, or torn dresses, or stained shirts, or for any scratches or bruises, nor indeed for any lost child. She shuddered at the thought. The children's voices were dying away now, and as she thought this last thought, she hastened to the table and rang the bell as loudly as she could. Then she went back and stood up on the steps. The shrill little voices, which had almost faded completely, began waxing louder and louder again. And in a short while, the children burst excitedly into the schoolyard. The teacher breathed a sigh of relief. Thank God, she said. All the children rushed back into their classrooms. All, that is, except one, the one in the broad-brimmed hat. He sat on a tree stump and was beckoning one of the little boys to come out and play with him. The little boy slipped out and met him in the bushes and said hastily, "School call, you didn't hear the bell? Hurry up, no man, you ain't coming. I have to go back, you know." As he turned to go, the one in the broad-brimmed hat tugged at his shirt sleeve, and he turned back to see the tearful face, the pleading eyes. "Why you crying?" The tearful boy stuttered. I want to play a little bit more, but school call. You didn't hear school call?" The tearful boy formed words which his companion was hardly able to hear. "What you say? What's my name? It's Neville. But I can't stay to play, you know. We have to go inside. What class you in, by the way?" As he spoke, there was another loud clang of the school bell, and he looked around and said, "Let's go now, we'll be late." As he said this, he dashed away, but he went alone into the school. When he arrived in class, the teacher was just about to report one missing. She grabbed him and said, "I knew it was you. You always giving me the creeps. Didn't I say not to go into the bushes?" "Is me friend." "Which friend?" the teacher said, looking across the class. "He ain't here." "He isn't." "Oh, I wonder why." One of the little girls said, "No, miss, he ain't in this class." The child looked around the schoolhouse. "He ain't come back in school, miss. He was wearing a hat like this with a broad rim." And she touched her hat, and she was now showing with her hands how broad the brim was. She continued, and he have vine and bush coming down from the hat like this, and he small like this. The teacher laughed heartily at the way the child was showing how the little fellow was. Then she said, but child, you're talking about a Duen, broad brim hat with vine and bush growing on it. Then she laughed so heartily that she nearly choked. But the children grew frightened, and the same little girl who had spoken said, a Duen, miss? Yes, the teacher said, don't you know what a Duen is? Well, I'll tell you, because you might meet up one day. And seeing the fright on the children's faces, she laughed again. Then she said, you children must learn our folklore. Duendes are supposed to be the little creatures of the forest. They are said to be children who died before they were christened, and their souls cannot rest. That's why they have to wander in the forest forever. They have their little feet turned back to front. So when you follow them, you can't come back. She paused and laughed. Then she said warningly, when they take other little children into the forest, you never see these children again. Everyone was silent, and the teacher cried, come on, class, don't be sad. It's only our folklore. I'll draw you a Duen on the blackboard. When the teacher had finished drawing the Duen, it looked so funny that all the children laughed. And when she went to rub it off, some of them begged her please to leave it because they wanted to copy it. And then after they had finished, she rubbed it off and they passed on to their real lesson. But Neville sat there, dumbstruck. He could not get the drawing out of his mind. The picture the teacher drew on the blackboard was so much like his little friend that he could not believe it. Although the drawing had been rubbed off the blackboard, he could still see the little fellow seated on the tree stump, and he could not take his mind off his friend. He said to himself, tomorrow I'll look for him, little scamp. Next day, when the boys were playing police and thief in the schoolyard, Neville, who was the policeman, saw one of the thieves dash into the bushes. He plunged into the bushes after him, and after chasing him for some time, he discovered that he was running after his friend of the previous day. He kept on chasing and chasing, having to jump over drains and run around trees and through thickets. And although he realized that both himself and his friend were tired, neither of them would give up. He was now panting and he wanted to give up, but he could not face up to it because the police never gave up. He had to pursue until he dropped. He followed his weakening friend far into the high woods until, at long last, the friend faltered and fell, and Neville pounced on him. Aha! I arrest you in the name of the law. And he was blowing so hard that he had to hold his waist and pause a little. His companion looked up at him and beamed. He was far from being sad-faced now, and what was strange, he was not even perspiring. Back to the jail yard, Neville said. The boy with the broad-brimmed hat let Neville push and pull him about without their getting very far out of the forest. Neville began to be a little concerned about getting out, and now he was suddenly alarmed because he thought he heard the school bell. He wasn't sure. It was a faint sound. At this moment, he forgot he was supposed to be the policeman. School call, boy, let we go. His companion said nothing, but looked away into the forest. Come on, let's go. You ain't hear the bell? I arrest you again. Come on, let's go before Miss gets the creeps. But instead of answering him, the little boy began to ramble amongst the trees. And then he seemed to pluck his broad-brimmed hat from amongst the branches. And then he went and sat on a tree stump. Straight away, Neville began shaking. because he was recalling the picture the teacher had drawn on the blackboard. He looked at the deep, dark forest around him and he cried, "Oh God, tell me, little fella, you is not a doing? The teacher say you was a doing, boy. She draw you on the board yesterday." And it was only now that he noticed the feet pointing the wrong way. He cried, "Oh God, you was a doing in truth." He screamed with fright as the little boy rose from the tree stump. The school itself was far away, and Neville was so weak and confused, there was no way he could get out of the forest. The end.
Thank you. What a lovely reading. Spooky. Any comments?
You're welcome.
Well, yes, that was a lovely story. And I hope that Afisa will join us a little more often. And again, I want to say that Poetry and Prose thank Afisa and the Baby Library for accommodating us over and over again. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and feature Cassie. He's doing an original piece called Who's Who.
Every night, baby Johnny tumbling off his bed. I feel as a Jumbie, the father said. Plans catapulting to the ground, as if on their own without a song. Mannequin dressed in ghostly apparel appears on some nights wearing a towel. Dogs bark at passerby, no one can spot. Scatter when they hear the clang of a pot. These events occur not far from each other, but no neighbor seems or knows the doer. Some says it's the man who recently moved in to the community with a hand like a fin. Some say it's the woman they always suspected, as by most she was constantly rejected for being malicious and for gossiping, though many a wife found her tales interesting. Again, some thought it was a family of 5, whose daughter, they say, went missing, only to return alive with a baby kissing. Of all these suspects, each group was sure, though none knew what lay behind another's door. One day they heard a growl, a grunt, strange coughing, but as they gathered, a shadow ran off in the direction of the river. Some surmise it was the child father, or would not be surprised if it were the gossiper. Or could it be a sukuya, or the man with the fin returning to his home, or the passerby going out to roam? Perhaps it was just the mannequin, or the Jumbie gone to rinse his skin. A group followed in procession to the river bank, as if honoring the ghost that suddenly sank. Stewed chicken, so sweet, with curry chana, wild meat laced with Congo pepper. They gorged themselves and drank till midnight, then gradually transformed, which caused a fright to the children and adults who peeped at the sight. The dead are not dead is the chant they sang. Baby Johnny woke up and kicked his pram. The end.
Thank you for that reading. Wow. Any other comments? It's a lovely piece, Cassie.
It was well read, for sure. I love the voice.
I like the intonation, you know, it really gives us this spooky feeling. Thanks, Cassie.
Yeah, that was quite entertaining. Thank you.
Okay, it's this tough piece to follow. Tell you that much.
Right. Okay, so that is what I was thinking. Thanks for saying that, Gusha. I was going to ask if it detracted from, you know, the story itself. Maybe it did. So, well, better luck next time.
No, it didn't detract at all. It's such a good piece and a great reading that it's tough for me to follow.
Okay, all right.
I'm up
Thanks for the
next.
compliment. Thanks for the compliment, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Frank.
All right, if there are no other comments, I am going to be reading Trisha Chin's Paper White. Muffy's gone into the closet again, Lillian pronounced as she plunked onto the couch. That child, Auntie Gea sighed as she got up from the table where she'd been sorting clean laundry into piles. That child, Lillian heard muttering in tune with the heavy flop of Auntie Gea's slippers as she ambled heavily down the corridor. Lillian picked up her Barbies and mimicked them kissing, as if they were Victor and Nina on The Young and the Restless. Auntie Gea's wasn't to see, so she added in a little dialogue. Oh, Victor, Malibu Barbie exclaimed. Oh, Nina, regular Barbie responded. The two of them kissed wildly, rubber limbs moving violently to Lillian's play until she threw the Barbies in the air. Malibu Barbie landed behind the cords of the TV in that icky space of dust, living spiders and mummified lizards. Regular Barbie slammed against the curtain that hid the sun from entering through the glass patio door. Lillian watched as regular Barbie laid on the floor unmoving. The television station had changed to midday news. Bored, she picked herself up off the couch, navigated the Legos, building blocks, dolls, teddy bears, and coloring books that she'd strewn on the floor, and took herself down to the corridor of Muffy's room. By the time she got there, Auntie Gears had somehow managed to coax Muffy out of the closet. She had Muffy sat between her legs on the soft carpeted floor. She was combing the long tangles out of Muffy's hair. Auntie Gears sang while she combed. Muffy sat, straight eyes ahead, unmoving, listening. That night, Lillian went to Muffy's room. She knocked and entered before Muffy could respond. Her twin lay on the bed in a white nightie, in the stark whiteness of the room with the curtains pulled to let in only moonlight. Muffy looked as if she was barely breathing. Lillian sat beside her and watched her chest slowly rise and fall, her eyelashes fluttering slightly with each movement. Muffy, I know you're awake. Muffy made no response. Lillian traced the blue veins that stood out against the whiteness of Muffy's pale arms. I just wish you would maybe come to New York with me, maybe try. From the heavy breath that Muffy inhaled, Lillian knew she was awake. She lightened her touch and hummed a verse of one of Auntie Gear's old songs. Their parents found them that way when they came to call them for breakfast. Muffy, Won't you come to the airport to at least say goodbye? Muffy said nothing. That night, Muffy woke up. The moon streaming through her windows had called her. Her veins tingled bluish blue as the cool light caressed her. She slipped out of the bed and twined her body against the stream of light that had reached into her room to call her awake. I'm coming, she called as she turned her head this way and that, listening to the chiming music that was the moon's own call. Her hair like a flag behind her, she climbed through the window and jumped softly onto the dew-soaked lawn. He was there outside her window, waiting for her. She had known him her whole life. He had looked in her window when she had lain asleep with her twin. He had touched the shocking black mat of her hair with his finger, and she had opened her baby eyes to him. She'd never forgotten. And for every full moon thereafter, neither did he. They had roamed and traveled the length and breadth of Trinidad, unlikely companions. He was taller than the tallest tree, his head so high it sometimes brushed the smallest cotton ball puff of the low-laying cloud. Yet every full moon he waited for her. He beckoned each time from her window and she followed, trailing tiny in his long-legged wake. Sometimes from his great height, he'd lose the sound of her footfalls as she trailed behind him. He'd turn, then would see stiff trees and houses in his hands until there, he'd found her. There was no effort for him to lift her upon his palm. To him, she was weightless, and he occasionally brushed long fingers against her long dark hair, and each time he did, he gave her some of his effervescent moonlight life. It made her shine so bright. For nights, her parents had known something was wrong. As a baby, Muffy could not sleep unless the window was open. Sometimes they came back to her crib and knew something was different, but did not know what. Her dark eyes never followed them. They were always looking away. She had been a silent baby. She never compared to the constant racket of Lily. Afraid, her parents had taken her to the doctors, the best in Trinidad and abroad. A tumor, the doctor said. She should not be alive. A tumor? Her parents looked at Lillian, who'd played happily beside Muffy's silent, unmoving self. A tumor? The doctors nodded. There's nothing we can do. Just keep her comfortable. They gave her everything they could. But comfortable? Her mother had cried, what is comfortable if she is dying? Muffy never spoke. She ate what was in front of her. She listened to her parents and did exactly as they asked. Lillian was a terror, sometimes two. It's to make up for Muffy being so sweet, the other parents said. Mummy and Daddy nodded. Yes, sweet. It was only when they saw the dirt stains on the carpet of Muffy's room some mornings, they started feeling afraid. It happened for years until they realized they only saw the stains the morning after the full moon. They put in cameras and watched as Muffy climbed out of her window every full moon night and returned to her room well before dawn. They saw the tall figure of Moon Gazer, a terrible Moko Jumpy in their eyes, and they were afraid, but Muffy returned every time. The following mornings, she was alive and well, so they let it go. One day after Lillian had gone to college abroad, Muffy came and rested her head on Mummy's lap. She made signs that her head was hurting. Mummy gave her a Panadol, but Muffy came every day. The headache didn't stop. They took her to the doctor, then more and more doctors. It was the tumor. She should have been dead a long time now. Mummy and Daddy took her home. They called Lillian and she flew back. There was nothing anyone could do. That last night, unknown to Muffy and Moongazer both, Mummy and Daddy watched from the top of floor of their house, using a telescope bought for this purpose, which they used in turns. When Moongazer was nothing but a blur on the horizon, Mummy put her hand on Daddy's shoulder. He'd been weeping and he didn't even recognize it. She's gone now, Mummy said. She's gone. They went downstairs and looked in at the sleeping form of Muffy, her skin opalescent against the white sheets, white curtains, white rooms. Her chest did not move. Mummy buried her head against Daddy's shoulder and they held each other until the paper white moonlit sky was broken by egg yolk dawn. And that was by Trisha Chin. Thank you for allowing me to read. Any comments?
Yes, a beautiful story there, Trisha. Nicely delivered to us. There are lots of how to say, sayings inside of there, even though they weren't spelled out or under quotes, but quite a rich folklore inside. Well written.
Yeah, I thought it was very descriptive. You can see I mean, she used words to really paint a picture, and you can see yourself in the picture. So it was quite descriptive, enjoyable.
Thank you. Trisha is one of our local authors, and she also has a book out. So if you'd like, you can search her on Amazon and see copies of her book. She allowed us quite effortlessly to read a few of her pieces today. We're going to go ahead to Frank. Frank is reading from his novel.
Well, I should give you a quick preamble. It's just an excerpt from one of my short stories. It's a book of 4 short stories. And the first story is about a Chinese family in Princestown, 1927. The name of the father is Yuk. Name of the mother is Fan, F-A-N. And she's described as a very irascible person, easily angered. And it's somebody you want to steer clear of. And they had a beautiful daughter, 16 years old. Her name is Jing. And she's fallen in love with an Indian boy by the name of Ram. And the parents had to leave the home to go to Princestown on business. And Jing, who is the 16-year-old girl, sent a note by her younger brother to Ram to have him come over for the very first time in their private quarters in the house. So I'll take up the story at that point. I tiptoed into the Lee's living quarters. It was dimly lit. There were 6 doors leading to rooms off the main room. Curiously, each door had a number. Being on the 2nd floor, they were numbered 200 to 206. The living room curtains were closed and the blinds drawn, leaving the house in a night-like darkness. Jing, Jing, I whispered softly at first. Then her name a second time using a high pitch. I saw the flickering light of a kerosene lamp through a crack in one of the bedroom doors, room 206. Jing, I used a firm 2 octaves lower than before, but then a sexy voice as sweet as nectar beckoned me from within. I'm here. You could have stirred that tone into a batch of ice wine and reduced it to a concentrate of aphrodisiacal syrup. Jing's sensual voice coaxed me into her boudoir, which with soft lighting beckoned me further. The mood was enough to ignite a libidinous fire in the most impotent. I smelled a hint of jasmine, but I couldn't see Jing. I glanced around. The room was femininely decorated in pinks and mauves, and a love seat upholstered in paisley fabric with red and gold threads sat opposite the bed. Scattered rose petals were placed invitingly on the pillows of the bed and on the white sheet. The walls were adorned with intricately framed Chinese embroideries and silk. A cavernous walk-in closet was beside the student's desk. A bookshelf atop the desk was packed with numerous love stories Jing liked to read. I believe she set the scene with knowledge from those novels. I walked to the window, parted the curtains with my index finger, and looked at the top of the warehouse below. Jing, I said, the timbre of my voice approaching what I thought was sexy. Suave, I stood there in the middle of the room for the longest 10 seconds ever. The door to the closet opened slowly, and what emerged was a voluptuously beautiful woman walking lightly as if on a cloud. She was dressed in, of all things, a short red light district red negligee, so sheer it revealed a red high-cut panty. Her mons pubis, at least, as much as I could see of it, was hairless, shaved as though she was pre-pubertal. I gasped. I thought, that's the same sexy lingerie Yuk imported for Fan. Jing's secretly borrowed it from her mom. I was bowled over with desire. We sensed we would be channeled into a giddy whirlpool of lust and take a pathway to carnal knowledge without regard for restraint. By this time, sweat had formed on my back and chest. The drops of perspiration trickled down from my armpit, but stopped short of my belt line, as even gravity had paused to admire this vision of sensuality. My hands trembled. I could handle a belligerent sledge, but this, I was essentially a lump of mush in the land of Dionysus, the Greek god of pleasure. An RCA Victor gramophone played a 78 shellac record, Tchaikovsky's None But the Lonely Heart, at barely audible volume. It was to be an orgy of two in heat. I observed sitting on the night table 2 shot glasses filled with what she said was rice wine. This rendezvous promised to be the culmination of 16 months of desire for both of us. Jing approached me slowly and, as usual, spoke to me only with her eyes. They said, I love you, you know. She walked slowly towards me. Her arms, as soft as ever, lightly rested on my shoulders. After sliding her elbows down in the front of my chest, she clasped her fingers at the back of my neck, gently drawing my face closer. So what I'll do, I'll skip to a later part of the story. And this is where the parents returned unexpectedly, and they could not consummate their relationship. So the boy, Ram, he jumps out the window to get away from the house before the parents can discover them in this compromising position in the bedroom. So he jumps out the window, and this is the story goes on. Once on the ground, I hugged the periphery of the property line in between the hanging clothes. I had to get back. I had to get to the back fence via the chicken coops and find a gap in the shards of broken glass on top of the brick wall. I made a dash for the coops only to hear a shrill, threatening voice shouting, "Hey, who's that?" It was Fan. She had caught a glimpse of someone or something. It could have been an animal, a dog, a cat, a manikou, a monkey from the woods out back. Fan had retrieved the dreaded meat cleaver as quickly as if she kept it in her purse. She was waving the weapon wildly and running down the coops. I took refuge under the largest chicken coop and crouched down, pulling a sheet of cardboard, not over me, but in front of me to separate me from Fan. By now, she was full of rage and prepared to kill whatever or whomever had invaded their space. Yuk, the father, watched from the top of the stairs, shaking his head in doubt that anything was amiss. This commotion was fortunate, as it gave Jing extra time to return the bedroom to the condition it had been in. Fan screamed, "Who's there? Come on out, is someone there?" I remained as still as a Madagascan chameleon, frozen in attitude and time, only my right eyeball following Fan's feet, as they were all I could see of her, and my left eye scanning the area for an escape route. Fan traversed the back shed and between the coops with muted footsteps like a hunter moving in for the kill. I trembled, intimidated by what I saw, her feet going by not more than 20 inches from my torso. The chickens were rattled and chucking wildly. Fan's high-pitched screaming and my intrusion exacerbated the chickens' panic. They anointed my body, head, face, arms, and legs with fresh, warm droppings, as if baptizing me with holy shit. A sample of liquid chicken poop split into 2 streams, and each one snaked its way from my forehead to either side of my nostrils and settled onto my philtrum, that furrow that connects the nasal septum to the top of my lip. I snuffed loudly to blow away the 2 streams before they reunited and flowed into my parted lips. The racket from the nervous chickens masking my shuffling. Fan walked away, and as I expected, she was still suspicious. I waited under the coop, motionless for the next hour, afraid of being spied on by Fan, who no doubt was surveying the backyard at 10-minute intervals from the 2nd floor landing. The droppings continued to pile up on my clothes like stalagmites growing on top of my body. Anyway, that's the end of what I'll read. It turns out that he escaped, and Fan never knew that he was there. Really, the book is mostly about racism, the sting of racism in the 4 stories that I write in the book, both in the Caribbean and in Canada. So it's available on Amazon, and if you look it up, you can type in Franklin Mohan, not Frank Mohan, Franklin, Franklin Mohan, and the book should come up. And it was published last year.
Okay, thank you, Frank, and we look forward to seeing you again and when you join us with more of your stories. Go ahead, Gusha.
Thank you. It's quite an interesting, spicy story to break up the spooky. We're going to go ahead to Krishna. He's going to be reading another of our lovely Alyssa Janki stories called Nature Walk.
Yes, this is another story by Alyssa in this genre, the nature walk. So peaceful. I strolled along the lonely boardwalk. I was glad to be alone at the nature resort. The boardwalk spanned from the beginning of the trail to the bamboo trees near the pond. After that, the trail was a simple dirt track that anyone could pass. I stopped to behold a rare raptor with outstretched wings, gliding silently in the sky. I watched him land slowly on the branch of the pui tree. I thought I saw a human figure standing under the tree, but when I inspected the view closely, nothing was present. Maybe I wasn't as healed as I thought I was. I continued my leisurely trot when a loud masculine moan caused me to stumble. I hastily jumped to my feet, but as I turned in all directions, nothing was amiss. I scolded myself for being paranoid. Unfortunately, after the incident, I had a habit of looking over my shoulder. I am sure it was the wind. This resort was restricted. There was no one else around. I continued my stroll, but I was tense. Do not think about it. I repeated this sentence in my brain. I forced myself to think rationally. There was no way, none. Nothing was there. Nothing was there. There was nothing there. I tried to convince myself that I was safe. I was safe, wasn't I? I was out of harm's way. Ah! Just like that, I fell on my back. It occurred so quickly. I was being dragged. I screamed, but no song came forth. I was like a vegetable. I awoke to find myself on the trail. I lifted myself out of the dirt, dusted my clothing. I needed to go home. Excuse me. I spun around. There he stood, my best friend's husband, Franklin. I felt a chill and I quivered involuntarily. Run, my brain cried. Just run. I scampered into a nearby trail that branched off from the main trail. This trail led me to the forest walk. I stopped running and turned around. Yes, he was nowhere in sight. I knew the way out of the forest walk. I was so exhausted from running, so I walked. I passed a huge silk cotton tree. My entire body trembled. I felt as though the tree was staring at me. Walk faster, thought to myself. Finally, out of the forest walk and onto the roadway leading to the car park. A huge flock of kobo dispersed. I had never seen so many all at once. As they departed, I saw Franklin standing in the road. I wasn't going to run. I had to face him. "What to you? Where one?" I inquired in hostile tones. "You could have given me a chance. You know I always wanted you." "Shut your tail. I will never betray Leanne like that. She's your wife. Have some respect now. May I want you?" I stormed up and went to my car. Why? Why try to cheat on her? They made vows to stay together for the rest of their lives. Leanne was so gorgeous, I didn't have half of her beauty. Why was he being a lascivious fool? Should I tell Leanne? Up to now, I was petrified of letting her know. What if she didn't believe me after all? He is a husband. As I was driving home, I decided I would tell Leanne. This man had resorted to stalking me. I was alone at the resort. What if something more drastic took place? I had to consider my safety too. I remembered the incident. We were at their stunning home. Everyone was downstairs. I badly needed to use the bathroom, but a lady and her 3 kids were occupying the downstairs bathroom. Leanne told me I could use upstairs. I used the upstairs bathroom, tidied my clothing, and unlatched the door. As I stepped into the hall, a cold, giant hand gripped my arm. I spun around to see Franklin. He pulled me towards him and kissed my cheek. I shoved him aside and pelted out the door and down the stairs. I made a quick excuse and left. After that, I did everything I could to stay away from Franklin and Leanne. I parked near a shady tree and took out my phone. I was going to dial her number. Before I could touch the dialer, my phone rang. Leanne's number was visible on the screen. Hello, I greeted. Giselle, said in a tearful voice. You okay? Now I felt guilty. What if she found out? Giselle, an hour ago, Franklin dead. He get a stroke. Thank you, Alyssa, for the honor of reading your piece, The Nature Walk.
Thank you for reading, Krishna. Any comments?
Yeah, want to thank Trisha and Alisa for giving us those lovely stories to read this evening. Yeah, and later on we'll hear Alisa read somebody else's story. Over to you, Grisha.
Yes, that's certainly coming up. Thought it was quite interesting how we have the big bad in these stories. And what makes the story chilling is that the big bad was someone that she knew quite well. So interesting. I think that always makes it much more scary when it's someone close to home. We're gonna move along to Shahira. She's going to be reading a story by Trisha Chin.
Hello, everyone. Today, I am going to be reading this story entitled Faisal's Place by Trisha Chin. What would you do? For riches? For gold? For fortune everlasting? Faisal heard one day as he walked through the La Perouse cemetery. Boy, what I ego do? Yes, he grumbled as he hoisted the poniard wrapped in brown paper and the crook stick. Like it's every day I struggling just to make a little day work. What would you do? For riches? For gold? For fortune everlasting? What the ass is this I hearing, boy? Faisal asked the sky, but the call got clearer and louder as he moved through the cemetery. The call stopped as he came upon the biggest mausoleum there. As he raised his foot to walk off, it started again. Like this coming from here, he said, and he crossed the little gate to push open the doors. An overwhelming stench overpowered him. Then it was as if he had lost his mind. Taking the poniard, he started hacking. Again and again at the seal of the tomb. It took him some weeks, but the seal eventually gave. He slid open the only coffin sealed within. A hand reached out to grab him. Faisal screamed and screamed, but those who live closest to the cemetery just woke up and trembled. Was it a man or beast? They didn't know. By the time the day broke for morning, Faisal was gone. For as long as anyone knew, Faisal lived in the Trujillo Mausoleum. Trujillo and them had left Trinidad or died out years before. No one really knew. All anyone knew was that the locked mausoleum with the stained glass specially brought over from Spain was suddenly opened by Faisal, and he began living there openly without a peep from any remaining Trujillos, if it had any left at all. And well, if Trujillo and them couldn't be bothered to evict Faisal, well, who was the city corporation to play fast and tell him to come out? To be fair, in the beginning, they tried. They went and made a proper row, throwing out all the pot and bedpan and mattress Faisal placed in the mausoleum to make it more comfortable for him. But if they wanted to play mad, well, Faisal could always play more mad. And when they found the 4 dead rats and 1 almost dead kobo, with what little life it had left, making it beat up outside the city corporation quarters in La Perouse, and to crown the whole thing off, there was a single coquille broom standing upright in front of the whole mess, with Faisal, own black dog, watching on languidly from the side. Well, after that scene, if any Johnny come lately, city official wanted Faisal moved from the mausoleum, it wasn't going to be done by the workers. No, sir. Not the laborers of the city corporation, or the loaders, or the charge hands, or the carpenters, or the masons. No, sir. That story spread and spread like wildfire through Port of Spain, and before anyone knew, La Perouse come like a thoroughfare as the whole of Port of Spain passed through to drop a bag of rice, a slip of butter, a basket of eggs, 3 candles, anything they could put their hands on to ask Faisal for his blessings on, anything from children writing exams to women looking for husbands and man looking for work. Every one of them came by Faisal by way of the Trujillo mausoleum, until one day, just so with no warning, nothing, Faisal was seen no more. Some said he had left the country, gone Grenada with a Grenadian woman, a vendeuse who sold yams, dasheen, tanya, edos, cassava, breadfruit, and plantains in the market. Others said it wasn't no Grenadian woman, their eyes darting this way and that. Someone, no one would say who, had heard sounds, terrible sounds, coming from La Perouse one night, and then Faisal was seen no more. Necromancy, the word hissed through the city with a fearful sibilance as the heads that spoke turned. but no one was watching. Necromancy, those in the know whispered as the thoroughfare that La Perouse had become went back to its placid lanes and unbothered dead. The gates of the Trujillo mausoleum closed in, and no one ventured there anymore. And that's it for me on today's episode of Poetry and Prose. Any comments?
Thank you. What a lovely rendition. Thank you so much for reading. I really enjoyed the story. We're just going to give everyone a moment to come off mute to comment.
Thank you, Shahira. You know, you always read so well, and you really, really give that story life. That story of the number one Obia man in Port of Spain.
Thanks. But you know, I made 2 mistakes.
No bother at all. I was so concentrating on the story that there's no mistake, man. You did very, very well. Thanks.
You did quite well. And I didn't even notice you made any mistakes.
Wow.
So
Thanks.
I really enjoyed it. I think it reminds me of how they say people play mad. You know, he just played mad. There's a poem by Kahil Gibran, How I Became a Madman. It goes, you ask me how I became a madman. It happened thus. One day, long before many gods were born, I awoke from a deep sleep and found all my masks were stolen. The 7 masks I have fashioned and worn in 7 lives. I ran maskless through the crowded streets shouting, thieves, thieves, the cursed thieves. Men and women laughed at me. Some ran into their houses in fear of me. And when I reached the marketplace, a youth standing on a housetop cried, he is a madman. I looked up and behold him. The sun kissed my own naked face for the first time. For the first time, the sun kissed my own naked face, and my soul was inflamed with the love for the sun, and I wanted my mask no more. And as if in a trance, I cried, blessed, blessed are the thieves who stole my masks. Thus, I became a madman, and I have found both freedom and safety in my madness, the freedom of loneliness and the safety from being misunderstood. For those who understand us, enslave something in us. But let me not be too proud of my safety. Even a thief in a jail is safe from another thief. And that's the poem that it just triggered for me. I had to look it up. Any other comments on our readings and Halloween before we continue with our last reading? I do have one question for the group. How do you feel about us celebrating Halloween in Trinidad now? It's becoming more and more popular.
I think it's something that's largely commercialized. I don't think we really celebrate Halloween per se. It's more like, the decorations, the Halloween parties, because Halloween is really a celebration of the dead, the Lord of the Dead, Samhain, and it traces way back to the Druids in Europe. So I think Trinidad for us is more like well, I think generally all over the world is more like a commercial thing, you know. You decorate, you dress up like you dress up like a character or something like that. So yeah.
That's so true. I was at work yesterday with my coworker, and her big dilemma was, help me find a Halloween costume where I don't have to spend any money. So we decided to go with cottage core. So she went to her Halloween party as cottage core. She put on some like a plaid shirt and some jeans, like some mom jeans, and she had a basket and she put flowers in it. And we did her hair is supposed to be done in two, you know, like in two with ribbons and curly and stuff. So she went as cottage core. Mutilal,
Yes, you
your
know,
thoughts?
although you know, you say we do Halloween is not really in our history or culture, but I like it because it gives us the opportunity to share our stories, our folklore. Because today we have been featuring some of our writers who write folklore theme stories. Trisha, who does that so well. Alisa, who also does that so well. And now we're going to hear a story by the late, great Al Ramsawak, being read by Alisa. The spotlight, Alisa, now.
Okay, hi everybody. You all could hear me, right? You all could hear me?
Loud and clear, Lisa, loud and clear. You're looking good.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to say one of the things I like about Al's stories. I mean, in addition to it being like, you know, representing local culture and stuff, I like how he has, you know, an illustration for every story, you know. So in addition to being a great writer, a great folklorist, a great storyteller, he's also a very great, you know, artist. So I'm going to read The Devil's Baby of Erin Forest. Valdez and Bali were fearless hunters of Erin and had no respect for evil spirits, as they boasted of their zombie repellent skills. And so they penetrated all parts of the forest without harm or evil encounters, as reported by other hunters. One night, as those two hunters rambled through the forest with shotguns and headlamps, they heard some heavy movements behind a clump of roseau palms, a short distance ahead. Valdez, in alert, hurried forward, and looking back at Bali, he said, "Hey, boy, Bali, that must be a big deer. You go wrong so, and are going from the other side at the roseau patch. That deer are getting away tonight." Having met on the other side of the palms, there was no indication of any animal. At that time, they heard a rustling of dried leaves further ahead. They followed until they saw a wild hog scurrying away. Not being able to find a good aim at the animal, they pursued for about 15 minutes when the beast disappeared. They stopped short, looking at each other with questioning brows. Sorry, I just read. They had penetrated well into the forest until they heard a distant cry, the cry of a human baby. And they wondered, for they were miles away from houses, and babies in the forest were unusual. As fearless hunters, however, Valdez and Bali decided to probe and to find the crying baby. Other hunters had often fallen victims or playthings of evil spirits and inexplicable apparitions in the wilds of our tropical forests. That area through Buenos Aires forest was one where many hunters feared to go, as they claimed that certain areas of that vast wilderness were governed by the spirits of our Spanish ancestors, which stood guard to the buried treasures of Spanish gold. In their curiosity, they followed the crying sounds over a hill and down a steep valley. They trailed until they came to a stream overhung by tall bamboos. At the roots of the bamboo patch and on the bank of the stream was a little clearing. There, on a carpet of dried leaves, they saw a dark baby in a cardboard box, which was padded with a jute bag. As their headlamps beamed at the baby, it soured up its little face and continued to cry. Bali studied the baby for a moment, and in a fit of excitement, he exclaimed, boy, that baby look like my neighbor baby. Who take it and put it here? They considered carefully and finally agreed to take the baby back to its parents' home in Erie. Bali took the baby in his arms and they set out for the village. It was minutes before midnight when Bali complained, boy, when I take up this baby, it was light like cork. But like it getting heavier now, is maybe again tired now. At that point, Valdez decided to relieve Bali of the burden. Not long after, Valdez complained, it's like the more we walk, the baby getting heavier and heavier. Boy, now it's heavy like lead. It's like I can't even tote the damn baby now. At that moment, a strange voice called out from the dark of a huge silk cotton tree nearby. Hey, Belloni, where them fellas carrying you, boy? The baby cleared its throat and shouted back in a loud, deep masculine voice. Boy, compay, me and where them fellas carrying me tonight, nah? But if they know what is good for themselves, they better put me back where they get me. Boys, all hell roll here in this forest tonight. The men froze in horror, and seconds later, Valdez dropped his evil burden. The horrified hunters broke bush through the dark forest, weaving through vines and stumbling over branches in a wild and desperate scamper back to the village. And to this day, the recollection of that horrifying experience is more than enough to raise hairs of fright, not only to those two daring hunters, but to the many others who have shared similar encounters. And that's the end of that story.
Thank you, Alyssa. Any comments?
That was quite entertaining. I can see the action as it's described. Was well read.
Yes, Al Ramsawak taught me
Thank you.
in high school, you know, and Al Ramsawak is one of the guys who get me to start writing. And he was a great fan of poetry and prose. He did many workshops with us at the library. So just like to mention that he was a great inspiration to me. He taught me at San Fernando Government Secondary.
He really captures the language because just the way the characters speak, you can envision them in your head right away. So
Yeah.
I love the way he mastered the dialect, the language, and changed with each one.
Well, just before he passed away, you know, I had to do a story using dialect, and he gave me some pointers there that I had to do a story. We were using dialect at virtual story time. So always remember Al fondly, and you know, he became a great friend to myself and to poetry and prose.
Okay, and with that, I believe it's time for us to close. I would like to thank everyone for coming today. A special thanks to Alicia and Janki and to Trisha Chin for allowing us to read their work. And Alicia, that was a lovely rendition of Al Ramsawat's work. Thank you so much. Our next meeting will be for the author of the month, and Mutilal will be reaching out to everyone with their poems to read. So you'll be hearing from us. If you want to read a poem for the author of the month, it's one poet that we've selected, and we're just going to be reading his work. So reach out to Mutilal. He has all of the work. Muti, anything else before we close?
Yes, well, it was a nice session, and thanks to everybody who attended. And please come again. And to Diana Ramsaran, I will send your poems tomorrow. So you have to come on the 15th, I think. Oh,
Okay.
all right, then take care.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thanks for
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
It was